Hey everyone! Welcome to the Bold and Beautiful 24. I'm Alessio, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Bold and Beautiful, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. Bill persuades Luna to terminate the pregnancy and let Will free. The Bold and the Beautiful recap for Thursday, September 18th, reveals that Bill Spencer pressured Luna Nozawa to end her pregnancy and liberate Will Spencer. Luna stayed ecstatic at Lee Finnegan's apartment after the positive pregnancy test result, but Lee, Will, Bill, and Katie Logan were all doubtful because Luna had previously faked results. Luna said she was as surprised as they were and declared that it was incredible, but Bill hauled her out despite her protests. Instead of taking Luna to the police, Bill took her to the Spencer estate and texted Katie to inform her. Will hoped Luna was just attempting to scam him, but he was concerned about Electra Forrester's reaction to all of the Luna drama he'd have to deal with. Regardless of how distraught Electra would be, Will realized he needed to tell her about his night with Luna. Electra was perplexed in the Forrester design office because she hadn't heard from Will in quite some time. Electra also told Hope Logan that she was glad she didn't sleep with Will the night of the party since they had a fantastic first time together. On Thursday's BNB episode, Hope was pleased for Electra, who had never felt so secure with a guy before. Sheila Sharp became disturbed at Il Giardino as she remembered Luna's Will preoccupation. Deacon Sharp noticed Sheila was distracted and assumed she was thinking about Hayes Finnegan, so Sheila stated she was thinking about her grandchild, though she clearly meant Luna. Lee eventually arrived and chatted with Sheila alone, so Sheila was surprised to find Luna had left now that Bill had shown there with Katie and Will. Bill maintained pretending Luna was operating a scam at the Spencer mansion, but she refused to change her positive pregnancy test result. Bill pondered why he should accept whatever Luna said, and he struggled to believe she was genuinely carrying Will's baby. However, Luna was adamant that this pregnancy was genuine, so Bill encouraged her to prove her love for Will by freeing him and having an abortion. According to teasers for The Bold and the Beautiful, Luna will continue to cause upheaval for the Spencers. At Lee Finnegan's apartment, the air was still charged with tension from the events of the past several days, and Luna Nozawa sat trembling, her mind racing as she clutched the little piece of plastic that had suddenly altered her entire future, her entire identity, her entire place in this twisted tapestry of the Forrester and Spencer families, because for the first time, there was no denying it. She wasn't just some troubled young woman grasping at straws, she wasn't just someone trying to cling to Will Spencer through lies and manipulation. She had in her hand proof, real, tangible proof, that her body was carrying a new life, a life she believed was conceived with Will, and for once, she wanted so desperately for them to believe her, to trust her, to see that this was not another scheme, not another desperate attempt to secure a place at the table, but instead a miracle she hadn't even dared dream about. Though as she looked up from that test, her heart still pounding, she was greeted not with joy or even tentative acceptance, but with the hardened glares of Lee Finnegan, her aunt whose disappointment had turned into disdain, with the skeptical squint of Bill Spencer, who had already decided in his heart that Luna's words meant nothing, with Katie Logan's uneasy posture as she hovered near the door, torn between pity and suspicion, and with Will himself, shifting awkwardly in his seat, looking as though he wanted to disappear into the floor rather than confront the consequences of one fateful, reckless night, and the silence that fell was deafening, broken only by Luna's unsteady voice as she whispered that she couldn't believe it herself, that she was shocked too, that this was something she hadn't planned, hadn't expected, but that it was still beautiful, still amazing, still a chance for them to stop seeing her as an enemy and start seeing her as family. Though her pleas fell flat as Bill's jaw clenched tighter, his hand cutting through the air as he dismissed her words and ordered her up, grabbing her arm in a way that reminded everyone in the room that he wasn't just a father protecting his son, he was Bill Spencer, ruthless, uncompromising, a man who had built an empire and destroyed countless opponents who dared stand in his way, and Luna, despite digging her heels into the carpet and crying out that this wasn't fair, that she deserved to be heard, was dragged out of Lee's apartment and down the hall like a criminal, her desperate sobs echoing while Lee's lips pressed into a thin line of grim satisfaction, because in her mind, this was justice at last, though none of them could have predicted what Bill would do next, because instead of hauling Luna to the police station and handing her over, instead of making her face the legal consequences Lee had been promising for weeks, he shoved her into his car and drove her across town in tense silence, ignoring her barrage of questions, her trembling pleas, her tearful insistence that she wasn't lying this time, that he had to at least let her explain, and when the gates of the Spencer estate loomed ahead, Luna's confusion deepened, because this wasn't a jail, this wasn't a police station, this was his home turf, the place where he controlled the narrative, the place where he could make the rules, and as he dragged her inside and ordered her to sit, firing off a terse text to Katie to bring Will as quickly as possible, Luna realized she wasn't free, she was trapped. In a gilded cage with the very man who would decide her fate, and in that moment, Bill Spencer laid it all out with brutal clarity, telling her he didn't believe her, telling her she was playing the same tired game she'd played before, telling her that if she really loved Will, if she really cared about him, she would prove it not by holding him hostage with a pregnancy, not by trying to lock him into a future he didn't choose, but by freeing him, by setting him loose from the chains of this scandal, by doing the one thing that would truly convince Bill she wasn't a manipulator, and that was to walk into a clinic and terminate the pregnancy, to erase this so-called miracle before it could ruin Will's life forever. And Luna, stunned, her mouth falling open, her heart hammering as if it might burst through her ribs, whispered that he couldn't mean that he couldn't ask her to end a life she had only just realized was inside her, that he couldn't strip away the one thing that made her feel valuable, the one thing that made her believe she wasn't just a mistake, but Bill, towering over her, his eyes blazing with fury, insisted that he could and he would, because his son would not be shackled to her, not to someone who had already proven she was untrustworthy, not to someone who had torn through their lives like a hurricane leaving only wreckage behind. And though Katie tried to interject when she arrived, her voice soft, urging Bill to calm down, reminding him that this wasn't his body, wasn't his choice, he silenced her with a glare and a growl, making it clear that in his world, the choices were his to dictate, and Will, pale, conflicted, guilt gnawing at him as he glanced between Luna's tear-streaked face and his father's ironclad determination, felt the weight of Electra Forrester's smile in the back of his mind, felt the crushing dread of the moment he would have to look her in the eye and confess everything, confess the betrayal, the mistake. The night with Luna that had now unraveled into a nightmare, and at Forrester Creations, Electra herself was still blissfully unaware, sipping coffee with Hope Logan and laughing softly about how glad she was that she had waited, that her first time with Will had been special, magical, everything she had hoped for, and Hope, ever the romantic, smiled warmly, telling her she deserved this kind of happiness, while across town, in the shadows of Il Giardino, Sheila's sharp eyes narrowed as she replayed her memories of Luna, of the obsession, of the fixation on Will that she had tried to brush off but could never quite shake, and though she told Deacon she was thinking about Hayes, about her grandchild, the truth was she was thinking about Luna, about the dangerous game unfolding, about how easily this could spiral. And when Lee appeared in front of her, sharp and accusatory, Sheila's suspicions grew tenfold upon learning that Luna had vanished into Bill Spencer's custody, a development that unsettled even Sheila's hardened heart, but none of that mattered to Luna as she sat in the Spencer mansion, Bill looming over her like a judge delivering a sentence, his voice echoing in her ears, demanding that if she truly wanted redemption, if she truly wanted to prove she wasn't the schemer they all thought she was, she would do the one thing he believed would set Will free, she would end the pregnancy, she would erase the life growing inside her before it had a chance to become real. And as the clock ticked and the walls seemed to close in, Luna realized she was standing on the edge of a precipice, caught between her desperate need for love and acceptance, her fierce protectiveness over the child she had only just discovered, and the crushing, merciless force of Bill Spencer's will, a force that threatened to strip her of everything she thought she could hold onto. And as Thursday's bold and the beautiful episode closed, it wasn't just Luna's future hanging in the balance. It was the fate of the entire Spencer family, tangled now in a storm of betrayal, suspicion, love, and control, with the promise of chaos yet to come. Her manipulations, the way Bill had dragged her away, the way Katie had sworn vengeance, and finally, the bombshell, that Luna was pregnant. Sheila, ever the opportunist, couldn't hide her delight, a sly smile tugging at her lips even as she pretended to be neutral, and Lee, sharp as ever, saw right through it, accusing her of knowing all along, of keeping the secret, of reveling in the chaos. And Sheila, after letting Lee vent, leaned back and admitted in that maddeningly calm tone of hers that if Luna really was pregnant with a Spencer child, then this baby was the ultimate bargaining chip, a literal get-out-of-jail-free card, because no judge, no jury, and certainly not Bill Spencer himself would want to see the mother of his grandchild locked away. Lee spat back that Sheila was crazy, that only someone completely unhinged could see a pregnancy born of manipulation as salvation, and Sheila's smile vanished, her eyes darkening as she warned Lee never to call her crazy, not again. Because she hated that word, hated what it implied, hated the power it had to define her, but just this once, she would let it slide, because she knew Lee was lashing out from fear that Sheila might be right. Back at Bill's mansion, the final act of this disastrous evening unfolded with a grim inevitability. Bill stood frozen in horror, staring at a bathroom counter lined with positive pregnancy tests, each one confirming what he had desperately hoped wasn't true, while Luna, emboldened now, lifted her chin and gloated, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of triumph and madness as she declared that she and Will were going to raise this baby together, that Bill could fight her all he wanted but he couldn't erase the truth, and Bill's hands clenched into fists as he gave her a look so murderous it made her falter for just a moment before she pushed on, waxing poetic about the wonderful life she and Will would give their child. Bill's voice cut through her fantasy like a knife, cold and sharp, as he told her she was certifiable, that Will hated her, that his son only loved one woman and her name was Electra Forrester, but Luna, undeterred, insisted that Will would come around, that the baby would bind them forever, that love would grow from obligation, and Bill, desperate to save his son, circled back to the abortion, pleading, demanding, even bargaining, reminding Luna that he had once helped her, that this was her chance to repay him, not with money, not with loyalty, but by giving his son his freedom back, by letting him go, by not chaining him to a life he didn't want. But Luna only smiled, a smile that sent a chill down Bill's spine, because he knew in that instant that she wasn't going to give up, and the war for his son's future had only just begun. And while Bill and Luna clashed in the mansion, Katie and Will sat in the Forrester office, sharing one last quiet moment, mother and son clinging to each other as Katie finally admitted she had been wrong, that she only wanted to keep him safe, that she feared the truth would break him, but Will, tears in his eyes, insisted he had to be honest with Electra, that he couldn't lie to the woman he loved, and with that, he pulled away, steeling himself for what he had to do. Minutes later, he arrived at Electra's guest house, his face grim, his shoulders heavy, and when she opened the door, radiant and hopeful, she rushed into his arms, telling him how much she loved him, how lucky she felt that he was hers, how nothing and no one could ever take their future away from them, and for a moment, Will almost let himself believe it, almost let himself drown in her words, but then the reality surged back, and his throat tightened as he whispered the words that would break her heart. But something happened. Something you need to know about. Electra blinked at Will, the words hanging between them like a dark cloud ready to unleash a storm, her smile faltering as she searched his eyes for clues about what could possibly be wrong, because in her world, in this little bubble she had created with candles and wine and rose petals scattered across the table, nothing was supposed to intrude, nothing was supposed to taint this night, and yet Will's voice carried the weight of finality, like a man about to confess a sin that would alter everything, and Electra, so pure-hearted, so trusting, took his hands in hers and whispered, "Whatever it is, we'll get through it together." But Will, already choking on guilt, couldn't meet her gaze, because how could she understand that he had been careless, that in a moment of weakness or manipulation or both, he had been with Luna, and now there was a child whose existence threatened not just their love but their entire future. In that instant, Electra's joy, her certainty, her confidence in their bond, contrasted so cruelly with Will's torment that it was almost unbearable to watch, because here was a woman ready to pledge her life to him and here was a man about to break her heart. And back at Bill's mansion, the father who had spent decades trying to control every aspect of his family's destiny was losing his grip entirely, standing toe-to-toe with Luna, his veins throbbing at his temples, his voice low and dangerous now as he said that he would never, never allow her to ruin his son's life. But Luna, who had endured humiliation and rejection and being treated like a pariah, was no longer the fragile girl people once dismissed. She was steel now, hardened by survival, and she lifted her chin defiantly, telling Bill that his son wasn't a boy anymore, that Will made his own choices, and that this baby was proof of a bond that even Bill couldn't erase. And as the words left her lips, the truth was that she wasn't just speaking to him, she was convincing herself.